All right, so first of all, I'm just thrilled to be talking to a group of painters, especially women painters, and just come from a place of totally sympathetic sort of understanding of what it takes to be a painter, how to devote oneself to that and keep believing in it as an art form. Over the years, I've been painting since I was in my 20s, so that's like, 35 something years. And I just always thought of it as a calling. And so what I'm going to show you is sort of like a real compressed version of like how I developed my relationship to the subject, but also going from a representational artist to an abstract artist, which a lot of people ask about. When I was teaching at Cal State Long Beach, my focus was on teaching advanced color theory for painters, but also I taught classes in abstraction, which covered, a lot of contemporary approaches to abstraction and hybrid painting, which most painting today we know is hybrid painting, which is a combination of non-objective and imagery. Okay, so please, if you have a question, you can unmute and just ask me. I'm going to go through quite a few slides, but I'm going to go fast till I get to the end, and then you can see the more recent work. This is my studio, probably like a couple years ago. I'm not sure that I can go next. This is one of my newest paintings that sort of is starting. I've been painting my whole life, but I feel like it's starting to combine all the things that I've been distilling and being interested in for so many years. I'll talk about this painting more in the end, but I want you to just keep in mind that I'm working with geological issues. I heard you talking about Palos Verdes slide, and that is like one of my topics right now. I took a class this summer in geology, and I'm pretty interested in all of that substructure and movement of the earth as well. Some of the seminal images that influenced me were like this George Inness, which is a very interesting and spooky painting because of the reflection. And the reflection is in the earth, and yet it has a subject within the reflection, which is sort of a non-existent tree, which is like the belly button of the earth, or there's some type of eye reflecting the sky, but it's in the earth. And so this reciprocal sort of structure has been recurring in my work like my whole life. So you'll notice it. Another seminal image is the wheat fields with Van Gogh, with the laying down of the horizontal, almost like a grave or an internment within the earth. Again, another place for the body in the earth, and then this reciprocation between the sky and the earth. When I was in grad school, I did very large charcoal mixed media drawings of spectacular accidents around the world. And I was interested in accidents, and this was like in the 80s and 80s. I was interested in accidents because this idea that we try really hard to have patterns and regularity, but there's always some disruption, and that there's always this, sort of duality that's sort of informing our lives. This is just a close-up. I come to painting as a drawer. Structural drawings, you think about like Giacometti, things like that. And so I did many of these drawings from landscapes that were photographed and documented, and also landscapes that I found myself, so passing years. One of my first teaching jobs was at Humboldt State University, and I was up there in the wetlands, which is a bird sanctuary. And at this point, I was really beginning to paint fluidly from a drawing background. The landscape there was big skies, and at that point there were pulp mills, and there was a lot of fumes, and being interspersed with this bird sanctuary. And again, this dichotomy of this double sort of reality was something that was striking me as a subject. And I did multiple series with this as well. And so here I'm exploring really color and the sky form for the first time, you know, and after already drawing and stuff for many years. After I got to LA, I got the job in Cal State Long Beach about 89, yeah, 89. And so I taught there for 33 years. And I was also focused on, you know, developing the series about the landscape. And at this point, and in many points in my development, you're going to see a combination of drawing, and this way this is collage drawing, and then large paintings that would be coming from a similar kind of structure. And it's pretty evident that I wasn't able to paint as well as I could draw, and I still can't, but because painting is so much more difficult. But here, this was like a flood that happened in Mississippi, and I read about the mud and the floating, and I created these images of detached forms. Another drawing, it's mixed media collage. And paintings that go along with that. The painting started to become river-like. Again, I was trying to figure out how to float images in space so that I still had a sense of a dimensional landscape, a spatial landscape, but had an intimate relationship to it. And so these are, yeah, go ahead.
How big are these paintings and drawings approximately?
Okay, the paintings are 8 feet long. I paint really large scale. And
Wow.
the drawings are like the drawings, this one's probably like 40, 60, 40, 30 inches, something like that.
Are you working in acrylic in your paintings?
No, these are all oils. I'm still working in oil, but I'm you know, I'm actually going to try to switch to acrylic so I could work faster. At this point, my painting and drawing was very physical and vigorous. Like you can see the charcoal, the kind of intensity that's going on with that. And I was working with palette knife as well as brush, trying to figure out how to use line and pouring and trying to figure out a lot of things about oil paint. This is one about water and floating. Again, it has a reflective surface to it. So a couple more of these. These are like meant to be submerged within the water, like wood or some type of spirit. I was interested at this point in, you know, the animated quality of the earth and, you know, feminist point of view, and was reading a lot about that. Here is a very large painting. It was about 12 feet tall. And within this painting, I also tried to get very big moves of sky and internment and land, but also detail. So I'm actually in here like using like rubber stamps and trying to get like smaller detail in here because I didn't feel like I had the dexterity to draw it in the paint, which, you know, it took me a long time to get to that place. Some of these paintings were about walks. This one's called Switchback, and this was about walking in the same San Gabriel Mountains, which is very dear to us as well. And I was working with clouds, rock forms. Like in this one, there are inverted scale shifts. So the clouds are really tiny and sort of mapping elements, and then the leaf forms and the vine forms are much bigger. And so I was just trying to shift priorities of scale with that. Sometimes I would see something in the landscape that was an anomaly that really struck me as poetic. Like this was, we went out to the desert to see the desert flowers in the spring and it snowed. And so just the juxtaposition of that plus, you know, the desert and the kind of dichotomy again, this tension between things. You can see patterns in this one as well. This pattern structure, I forgot to add the image of it, but from the rubber stamps, I started to work with clay tablets that were plasticine tablets that I pounded with a hammer and then carved maps into it. So these became a way of printing into the painting. So the clay, I would put the oil paint on the clay and just press it in. It was very kind of labor intensive, but it gave me a lot of texture and interesting repetition, which I think was useful in my struggles with developing an abstract language. From this kind of abstraction too, I was drawn to, again, maps of the world, ancient maps of the world, the whole series of drawings that were going on around this time. We're using collage of actual ancient maps that, I was photographing and reading about, and interested in how these maps had anthropomorphic, like, sort of representations of the body, sometimes hearts, and so on, within the maps. A couple more from this series. You can see that these are very big. This painting's probably, again, 8 feet by 6.5. So those are big clay tablets that I'm working with. And also the split, you can see the split in the middle of the painting is a way for the body to go through to align with symmetry, but at the same time, there's always asymmetry. So you're always being pulled away from it. This was inspired by walking in a field of mustard one spring, and the blackbirds were flying through, the ravens. So a recurring theme too is the birds that come through sometimes in the work. This painting was enormous. I don't know why I destroyed it, but I did. It was about like just tree trunks and forests. This one was also very huge. It's called Pecking Order, and it was really looking at the things flying in a field, like what was big, what was small, and the flight patterns of different insects and birds. And it was really lyrical, but I was sort of getting, as I was learning this language, I was getting off track of what I really wanted to talk about, which is, climate change, which I'd been doing since the 70s. I don't know why this picture is here, but that's when one of my poodles was young. So I was working, along these lines, and this painting is an example of trying to work with metaphorical imagery that has to do with permafrost and the structure of the inner earth and the melting that I was reading about, and so how that's pulling apart and what is, and as I was painting this, I was having discussions with people, and they're like, we don't get what you're doing now. Nobody gets what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. So, I kept struggling along, and then it was 2005 when the Hurricane Katrina happened. And for some reason, the Hurricane Katrina left so much structure on the landscape and so much debris. And the idea of the mega flood, well, of course, now we have them all the time, but when that first happened, it was a really super impactful to me on many levels. The water, the dissolution of structure, the Great Flood, the metaphors of all of that stuff, and the chaos in the culture and so on. So, but to get from here to here, I started to work with these transparencies, and I've been working with these since then. So in other words, another way of getting imagery for me was to project in just a overhead projector with these transparencies that I make from photographs. The photographs come from news, sources, as well as my own photographs of the landscape that I live in, which is right here in the industrial harbor of San Pedro. So this will show you that some of this imagery would get projected on top of the abstraction, and there'd be a battle. And when I was projecting the imagery, I was projecting at night, so it was twilight or pretty dark. So I couldn't really tell what the color was or how it was laying. So there was a way of provoking more accident and chance in the work as well, which helps me with my creativity. So this is a series that was done in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And you can see that pool shape was something I was using quite a bit. I did many drawings as well. Some of these are, transfers. I want to say like, with Xerox transfer, but it's called something else. And, rubbing the photograph, the copy, and then drawing into it to get specific kind of spaces. This is a wall of drawings that was a part of a solo show that I had at the Torrance Art Museum about this series. So this is typical, a lot of mixed media drawings going on that are exploring the subject and while I'm working on the paintings. Here is another one of my favorite ones from the Katrina series, because it has this symmetry and this sort of stage-like quality to it. And I was able to just put in precise spatial indicators. I was very proud of like the car, certain things, the truck, that I could like render something, So I got really more involved with, glazing, putting in more linear imagery and building the structure, and then subjecting it to a painterly process. This is, just a pile of trucks, containers that were blown to the side. A little bit about my process at this time too. This is how I would start a painting. So it would be, the colors came from looking at photographs of clothing in the mud that was left of Katrina. So I was also teaching color theory. So I'm underpainting with multiple striations of color. And then the, skeletal structure is projected from one of these transparencies of part of the, aftermath. And then this is the final painting. So you can see how far it went. And it got like, the deep horizon on it, and, inverted a couple times. And, it was a pile of debris against the sky. Probably one of the last ones of these works was this very big one called Blue World. And it is quite a bit of glazing. It's a composite image of many of the structures of the houses and cloud forms. And, I was working with setting up, different zones, like a before, after, just kind of different color zones. But this was important to me because I really got the glazing to the place where I could use a lot of fine lines and multiple drawing, approaches, and then subject it to the glazing. So there's both a very beautiful transparent brown glaze over it and a cobalt glaze. And so that was able to unify it, but you'd still be able to see all of the structure or some of the structure. I tried to kind of go along with that for a while. I did the rebuilding and, kind of inverting the structures. And then I kind of ran out of steam with that because it was like, maybe I worked with that for 3 years or so, 4 years. So finding these kind of structures of, this kind of cage-like structure with the rebuilding led me to a long series. I'm just going to show you one of these that is about the exporting of e-waste from our harbor to other countries. So I was looking for actually subject matter that was local, rather than something that's happening somewhere else. Like I wanted to paint about what's going on in our environment. So you probably know that a lot of the electronic waste and e-waste is shipped away and, broken down. So I was looking at containers and how containers are filled and imagining that as a subject. And it was interesting because it was a container within a painting. And I did a series of those. And from there, I was responding to, major environmental events. And that became a thing for me until it just became so prevalent that you can't do something every day because it's just increased and increased. It's probably like right around 2012 at this point, 2013. This was a response to Deepwater Horizon. And I want to tell you that it's not something I think of. It's something that intuitively comes through me. So I'll be working with images of e-waste for whatever I'm working on, and then I see something on the television or in the news, and then it comes through like like a scream or an emanation or something that is underwater. And this painting I like too because it's got these industrial structures that are very frustrated and they're trying to make sense of something, and it almost has like a speaking voice to it, but it doesn't make sense. And so one of the things I'm interested in is how science and technology struggle to objectively deal with or name what we're dealing with when in fact it's beyond our comprehension. So it's kind of like a love-hate with science and technology. So Deepwater Horizon, when this is a very big painting that was a response of the Fukushima happened right after that. And as you can recall, a lot of the infrastructure and whole like wharfs and buildings and everything floated across the Pacific Ocean and came ashore in California and the West Coast. So I was working with this. I was inverting the forms and also trying to create this precarious balance. It looks so small here, but this painting, when you stand in front of it, would be like really towering over you. And so again, it talks about balance and this futility and, the teetering of the situation that we're in. But I didn't come up with that structure. The structure evolved over a lot of painting. So when it's successful, I'm very happy. From that, thinking about the ocean and what was in the ocean, I started to think about the e-waste, not the e-waste, but the, Pacific Gyre, about that, which they are now finally cleaning up, which is this sort of moving island of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. I did a series, probably 5 or 10 paintings of that, thinking of it as sort of this big weight that's just kind of floating through the ocean, and using some of the e-waste imagery as well as, some of the ocean, feeling that you're moving back and forth in the ocean. There's stuff I'm skipping, just because there's so much history. But here's a shot of the studio that shows how I might start a series. Like I'll get 3 canvases and like, let's try to make them different. I'll make a red one, a blue one, a yellow one. And then I'll start projecting imagery on it and then working with big shapes. This was during the time of Hurricane Sandy. And if you remember, the Funtown amusement park was floating away. And that was a very interesting and, ironic image for me to think about too. So this is one of the paintings that ended up coming from that series, with the Ferris wheel and the collapse. This is also a collapsed Ferris wheel that they had to dismantle. And the colors were taken from the amusement park as well. Meanwhile, infrastructure around me continued to impress me. The bridge that was being built between San Pedro and Long Beach started up. The old bridge was there, and for 5 years I drove by it and saw them build this incredible expanse bridge. I don't know if you've been over it. Hopefully you've seen it. It's a 100-year cable bridge. It's going to last for a long time, and it was the suspension bridge that they built. But first they had to build all of these structures on both sides, one on San Pedro and one on Long Beach, and then they met in between. And it was an amazing thing to see. This is a photo of one of the construction sites, but the series that I did about engineering, this is a little tiny painting about 20 inches. Another one small. I did a series and it was called Engineering. And I was really loving just working with the, the construction imagery and colors and the kind of futility of, yeah, we're building up, but of course it's falling apart at the same time, and kind of working with like tinkering along with that. This structure is also the industrial, the industrial expanse of Terminal Island. This one became like a ship on the water. I had just seen the Turner show in San Francisco, and I was really impressed by the big sails on the water. And I think it influenced this one called Clipper. So at this point, it's like full throttle abstraction, I would say. There's some, illusion of space and landscape, but mostly I think the effects of me driving through this landscape daily, watching it rapidly change, and being impressed with the industrial expanse of it, and kind of loving it and criticizing it at the same time. On the other side of the Terminal Island and the whole harbor that I see from San Pedro, which is this ever-growing port of containers and ships, is the Pacific Ocean that San Pedro looks out at. And I think somebody mentioned there in Palos Verdes, so you have the same view looking out. So there's this very calm, luminous space, and then there's this very frenetic, crazy loud space. And I'm like stuck between these worlds. So I've always wanted to try to capture the light of, the reflection of the sun and the way the light plays on the ocean. So I did a series called Illuminations. And this was a group of paintings that I showed in Germany. And it was, again, this hybrid structure of, it's got imagery, but it's got a lot of abstraction. I was also pulling in more imagery of birds and sensory experience like sound, and trying to get a sense of like a 360 point of view of positioning oneself in the world, in the planet. So these all have shafts of light through the middle and some type of sky earth form that are swirling around as though, this is all one sort of ecstatic experience. I'll show you, just like that's Terminal Island. So that's like one side of it, and the ocean, of course, is the other side. There's also a marina here that sometimes I walk through, and this is, at night you can hear a lot of the birds and see the night herons fishing. And I was working with sails and just the sounds with this, and trying to get the imagery of the birds and forms to work with a structure in the landscape. This one's called Moving Cities, because of the amount of quick development and breakdown that happens on Terminal Island. This one is called Exposure. It's about being in this industrial space, the movement of it, the expanse of it, the churning of all of the harbor mechanisms, and then the calmness of the sky, or the sometimes I think of the sky as protection. Sometimes I think about it as an alternative reality. And this one, it's an alternative reality. I was reading about how glaciers are melting, and how the native Eskimos can believe that they whisper and they speak to them. And so I was thinking about the cause and effect of ground and sky and glacial melt and mapping. So Exposure, and this one's called Shield. So again, it's like the ocean. Whoops, there's my dog. Okay, the ocean. There's a figure 8, like a time, like almost like an hourglass form, that if you look at, you can kind of feel that out. So is there a way of shielding yourself from this, industrial or acceleration of, commercial activity, and, the cause on the environment is so obvious, but at the same time, we have to accept and live within it. And this was one of the paintings that was in a show. I'll just show you Lucy. There's Lucy. I did it because of the tail, right? You get it. She just came in and posed there. When she has to have dinner, she does this. She'll stand in front of it. So the Feminine Sublime was a show at the California Museum of California Art. I forget. It was in Pasadena Museum of California Art for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know if you went there, but it was pretty amazing. Beautiful space. It didn't last long. But we had a show curated by Constance Mallinson, who's under here, and with 5 of us. And this is Karen Kleinfelder, Dr. Karen Kleinfelder, who teaches art history. She's now retired too. And the concept of the feminine sublime is a concept of that there's a difference between the feminine sublime and the historic sublime. Briefly, it means that, and it's just being explored. Briefly, it means that at feminine point of view, feminist point of view, is that we are immersed in the landscape. We are immersed in the trouble, that we are co-participants, that there isn't a hierarchical point of view, like in the historic sublime, you know, it's the male over the danger in the landscape, that there's going to be a way of mastering that. But the feminine sublime, and this lines up with a lot of current writing on ecology and climate change and so on. If you read stuff about the Anthropocene. So that's also influenced that how I wanted to create paintings that were surrounding me, that the viewer felt, you know, not only are they in there, but that there's a space around, that it is, that we are co-participating with it. Here's a view of some of my paintings in that show. And meanwhile, time goes on, fires were happening. This is probably 2019 or 2020, where fires started to really get intense. Maybe the feminist sublime show was 2018. And in here, there are, you know, this is really taken from a lot of fire imagery of buildings that are become skeletal. I just had this plane reflecting the firelight that we see. Different animals in the negative space. I'll show you the stencils I'm using at this point in a minute. So it's a lot of emptiness, and that really is about missing pieces. So I was interested in fraying this is just like what could be an image that might influence one of these paintings. This is another fire painting. It's called Lookout, because my husband Bill used to be a firefighter. He's very into the specifics of firefighting, and we always spot the lookouts and you know, champion the firefighters that are out there right now. I don't know where the stencils are, but I did put them in here. You'll see them in a minute. Okay, so this is about 2018, and then I have upcoming, this is, you can see just working drawings on the floor during this period. Here's one of my drawings at this point, and you know, I've skipped over a lot of things because I want to get to the end here in time. But there's a collage. There's one drawing on Thibeault. There's another painting on Thibeault, and so it is kind of all glued together. So it's this kind of similar image to what I'm dealing with in the paintings. Here's a wall of drawings that were shown at my solo show at the Long Beach Museum of Art. The show was called Conveyance, and I wanted to make it about the harbor and about the ships conveying things back and forth, the birds conveying imagery, you know, infrastructure conveying energy. And so it was mostly drawings, these kind of 2 and 3 panel drawings that had collage elements on it. These are very tiny little paintings that I'm working on at the same time, which I just wanted to show you the way the stencils can sometimes line up and create these really interesting patterns. One of the paintings in the show was this one. It's called High Tide. It's about tide lines and the capping over a wall, water capping over a wall. But it has this reflections of birds and this kind of, reversal. Here, I just want to show you the stencils first. So the stencils, I have collected a lot of imagery, and I have one of my assistants cut all these stencils at different sizes. I have suns and birds and trees and meanders and a lot of different forms that come into it. So back to this painting, you can see some of that in here, but I wanted to show you how this painting started, because when I found this, I'm like, that's how it started? That's pretty interesting. So it's just like a field of color, a division of above and below, some active line. And then there's a field of color that's a window with the birds flying through. And then that window got covered by the water area and reflected down here. So there's an interplay of the geometry with the stencils, with the line work at this point. This is where I'm finally getting the language to work. And this is a giant, big painting. It's called Gravity's Angel. It was named after Laurie Anderson's song. And here there's like the roof off of a building. It's reminiscent of the storms, a building structure. There's these banners or flags that come down from the sky. I'm looking at a lot of medieval paintings at this point and thinking about the superstition, the kind of looking for signs in the sky. There's an upside down griffin here, like in the flag. There's a big serpent in this flag. These are all stenciled on and, painted into. So the language got really complex around here, around this time, 2019. A lot of bird stencils, birds escaping a forest fire in this one. Another one, this one's called Container. And it's a cloud. At the same time, it's containing, endangered species or other than human species. And it's set in the industrial complex. This one's called Last Winter, and it is about the melting glaciers. I was doing a residency in Oregon, and the glacial melt was very impressive to me, running through the rivers up there, the silver qualities of it, and just thinking about what is melting away and what is reestablishing. Another painting, yeah, and it's, what I'm getting to now, this is pretty current. This is probably 2021, 22. What I'm working for now is I'm really fighting for an image that's symbolic, that's metaphorical, that can hold a lot of meaning. So I'm not just painting a landscape. I'm not just painting an abstraction. I want it to be super meaningful. And I don't really, for me, and hopefully communicate some of that to the viewer, I don't stop until it has some type of meaning to it. And so a lot of times the danger is I overwork things quite a bit. I still like this painting. It's called California Gold. And it has had an interesting evolution. Down here is all the containers of the harbor. Above was this big tree that I projected upside down, this beautiful tree I found up in a dead tree up in by Idlewild. And these container shapes that I found just by cutting out containers, and they became these interesting shapes. But when I put it on as a container, again, like a place for the body, it became a fire line. So I just thought that's it. It just has so much of what's happening in California between drought, fire lines, and industrial expanse. So I was happy with that painting. But then I'm going to go over to this one. The canyon that I walk in every day burned around that time. So we're toggling back and forth between floods and fires in 2021, 2022. We're probably in 2022 now. And this is a bridge, and there were these beautiful palms, and then they all turned red and black, and I was devastated, of course, thinking, you know, this is really bad. But I took a lot of pictures of this canyon. And you know, following this fire were the great rains of last year and the year before. And so this canyon just jumped back to life, like a jungle. I mean, it was just, this is a waterway that runs through. This one's called Arroyo. And it, you know, things were collapsing as well as burned, and there's, you know, yellow caution tape everywhere. During one of the rains, the tree fell down on the fence and it created this big opening in the jungle. And I really love this subject matter. So I painted with this subject for about 2 years with the lyrical, really the caution tape. I would take pictures of it. I didn't invent this. It actually looked like this, and I projected it. And, you know, the irony of this giant force and then someone coming along and making bows out of the caution tape, you know. And so I'm just showing you a few of these. And one of the most recent ones is this one that was just shown at the Torrance Art Museum. It has a safety cone note. It doesn't have the, but it is the collapse of the hill and the canyon. I was still into the canyon and walking along and taking pictures. I placed one of these palm fronds that I picked up, you know, a segment of it. And it just felt like, you know, I love the color. It was so dead against the pink and the dryness and the wetness. And then and it just became symmetrical. So they became like wings, like also like a torso or like a heart. And this is the kind of thing that happens that's very magical that I look for in painting. So it's always like a puzzle, and I'm just coaxing it along and trying, and then it appears sometimes, you know, to be resolved like this one did. This one's a little bit earlier. It looks funny in the slide, but it's a very big painting. It was about the floods in the Sacramento River Valley up there. It's called Tempest, and this is, you know, a lot of the meanders where I'm exploring that, as well as the caution tape. One of my most recent ones too is a collapsing hill. And it's pretty big. This painting is awkward, to tell you the truth. It's on top of an older painting, so it never had its basic structure originated. So I just worked with what was there, but it came out okay. I mean, you see some of these, you know, paint chips that look like, you know, light to dark. You see some of these. I want to explain that to you a little bit. So, you know, teaching color theory, that we a lot of times talk about all the contrasts of colors, such as warm and cool, light and dark, saturation, etc. But the warm and cool is such an interesting metaphor because it's about feeling, and that's why the Impressionists used it. So the warmth and cool and the kind of gradations of these are something that the weathermen use, right? When they do all the maps. And I love watching the, you know, elaborate weather reports and predictive models. And, you know, so I'm always looking for these little charts and the color codes that go with it. So sometimes you'll see those appear, like in this one and some of the other ones. They'll just be sort of like, yeah, it's warmer, it's cooler, or it's falling, but it's lighter, it's darker. Some of it is really just optical too. With this one, I put the caution tape on the side and it became like a billowing cloud, like a voice. So I like that part of it. Oh, I meant to put a shot of my studio today, but I didn't get there. These last 3 paintings are the ones I'm working on right now. There's this one, which is tidal, and it's also about the tides coming and going and the you know, vulnerability of the ocean levels that we're dealing with. This one, I'm not sure what I'm going to call it. But this one is really about the Palos Verdes slide. Because I was driving over there and, we're watching stuff on the news about it as well. And it just evolved as being this map and this sort of hilly landscape with the infrastructure being, affected by what's happening way underground. I would say this painting is about 98, 96% done. I have to tweak it and, get rid of some of the mistakes in it. But I think it's sort of indicating where I'm going in the future. And here's the one we started with. And it's called Earth Science. And just to bring you back to the beginning, I took a class, it was way over my head, but it was interesting for me to understand about subduction and, the makeup of the mantle and the crust and all the origins of life on Earth by studying geology. The summer at Stanford Extended Ed, I took a class. So it was really a wonderful experience for me. And that's a picture of me trying on a dress I'm not sure I'm going to wear. And those are those paintings in progress. So you can just see the scale in the studio. And that's it. Yay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know how much time I had. I know I went super fast, but
Oh, you're actually, we have a lot of questions that came up in the chat.
okay, should I get out of the stop sharing and then just answer, or
Actually, let's see what they are, and then maybe they have to go back to something.
sure.
Somebody said, okay, Karen would like to know if your landscapes were or are from photographs. And I think in partial, I think on the New Orleans ones they are, but are they mostly that way or?
Yeah, the evolution that I showed
Yeah.
you was from like a set point of view, like a
Yeah.
traditional landscape, to multiple points of view, to like floating forms, to now it's like a hybrid structure. So
Okay.
now there are parts of landscapes that come together to create sort of like a body. And it's cobbled together with a lot of parts. Some of it is imagination, and some of it is projected fragments of imagery. And some of the projected fragments come from my photographs. They come from found photographs, but they also come from like paper dolls. Like I'm like making little shapes and just projecting those, and funny little things like that will create shapes in the paintings. So they have landscapes, but they're not representing a specific landscape anymore. It's more of a composite space.
Ellen would like to know, just curious, how successful are you with sales?
Oh, that's an awkward question.
Okay.
I'm not a very commercial artist. I would say these paintings are difficult for most people. So, I mean, I have 3 galleries that show my work and sell my work, but it isn't, lucrative. Like it isn't how I make my money. I would like to sell a lot more of them, but they're big and they're difficult paintings. So, I'm trying to make them more simple so people can understand them better and want to live with them. But I did sell one of my favorite paintings at the show I just had in San Francisco at the Berggruen Gallery, and it went to a very high-end collector, and she loves it. And I went and visited it in the space, and I'm like, all right, somebody got it, so I'm very happy about that.
Suzanne said your work process, thematic focus is so thought-provoking and important as we grapple with ongoing realities of climate change and our destiny. And Catherine says, terrific and interesting work presentation. Everybody can come back on now if I want to unmute if you want to say anything.
Yeah, unmute, and I'll stop sharing. So we can see each other, and then maybe remove the pin.
I can remove the pin. There we go.
Okay, there we are. Yeah, just ask me any questions because we have a little time and I went very fast.
I have a question. Keep the dress.
What? What?
Keep the dress.
Oh, you like the dress? Okay.
I love your work. You're unbelievable.
It did look good. The dress was
okay.
I have a
Marie,
question. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Eva.
Um, I'm just concerned, like if I were to like maybe copy one of your paintings or something, how do you avoid it not getting muddy? Do you wait until one layer is dry until you put the next layer on?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very elaborate process. You know, like I said in the beginning, I'm thinking about, trying to transition to acrylic at least so I can go faster. But I use Galkid, which is Gamsol. Gamblin, right? They make Galkid. It's a resin-based medium. I put it in like, traditional painting medium, but it dries almost overnight. And I'm working on 3 to sometimes 6 or 7 paintings at once. So, I'm moving them around and, I'll just do the finger test. Can you take another layer? But really within a day or two, I can put another layer on because it is not thick. And the resin-based oil medium, Galkid, helps it dry much faster.
Do you
Yeah, and
consider
if-
that
if-
an oil paint? Do you consider that an oil paint?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
an
an oil paint?
oil-based medium. It's an oil-based medium.
Do you use any thickeners or do you use any kind of additives besides
Well, yeah, I use one thickener, which is the only safe one you can really use. But my paintings are not thick, they're thin. There are a lot of thin layers because it's dangerous to put a lot of layers on thick paint. It just cracks off. But
Adiola,
I'll use the marble dust. You know marble dust? Diatomaceous earth, like it's just white powder you can get anywhere. So if I'm painting and I want it to be thicker and it's too thin and I don't have time to like add more paint, make the color right, then I'll just dip my brush in the marble dust and it adds body to the paint that's too liquid. And that allows me to go pretty quick to get the consistency that I want. That's a good thing to know. Or
Adiola
even
has a
if
question.
you can get like a whole bag of it for like $, not much at all. It's just inert material.
Adiola has her hand up for a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I didn't really have a question. Thank you for sharing. It's so wonderful to see your process and the layering and, it kind of demystify your process and so intriguing also. So thank you for allowing us to see that.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I'm sorry I missed your show. I had somewhere else that night.
Oh,
Congratulations.
that's all right.
We have
Well,
a closing. We have a closing coming
I have
up.
the closing on the
Oh,
top.
okay, I want to see it. Yeah, I gotta pay attention to social media more.
Marie, did you see the container yard during lockdown? How high they were stacked?
Oh, yeah. I live
Wasn't
on
that
a
amazing? That
hill.
was insane.
Yeah, there was at one point 80 to 100 ships out there. Just
Yeah, it was
waiting.
ridiculous. Yeah.
That was amazing. I
It
mean,
surprises me. It surprises me you didn't do a painting about. I don't know if anybody saw that cartoon when there's like you can see the 80 ships in the harbor and there's an arrow pointing to the one at the back says your parcel is here.
It's right there.
I know we live in interesting times. It's very much about acceleration, right?
Yeah.
Acceleration of everything, just the changes. It's
always good.
hard to process it.
Mm.
Are you working on are your boards hard boards that you're painting on? You're not painting on canvas, I'm assuming.
No, I'm on canvas.
Oh, you are on canvas.
Large
Yeah.
canvases.
I'm on canvas. Yeah, can you see all those guys back there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So your
I mean-
large paintings are on canvas?
yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And they're on aluminum stretchers that I get from Lucius Hudson. It's the only way I can lift it because I forgot to tell you that I was in a car accident, back when I was using all the heavy charcoal and the da-da, and I lost not complete, but a really good use of my right arm.
Mm.
So I had to figure out ways of working lighter and thinner. And the stretcher bars, the aluminum stretcher bars I can still lift, but the mixing after all these years, and it's really hard on my arm. So I'm just kind of like working with modifying, you have to modify your process too over the years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So you stretch your own canvases then?
Well, because of my gimpy arm, I have an assistant stretch the basic tightness, and then I do the corners, I do the gessoing. You know, 3 coats of gesso, and then all the underpainting. So the underpainting, as you see, it's very elaborate in my painting. To get that kind of mood, I do a lot of underpainting.
I had a question.
Sure,
I
go
don't know,
ahead.
I can't see me, but how long on those larger paintings, how long does it take you to complete one generally?
Who's,
On those
talk-
large
who's
stages?
talking?
Nancy
I
Rossi
can't
was
see.
talking.
Yeah, I can't get my picture up, but I'm
Oh, okay, wherever you are.
yeah, I'm up here. I
Yeah,
can't see.
I mean, you know, I'm lucky if they go like a month, but sometimes, like some of them are about a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, about a
Yeah.
year. I mean, they're so complicated that just like puzzles, it hurts my brain, right? So, like, I'll go to the next one and I'll like, I think I'll play with you today because the other one's pissed me off so bad. And I'll just work on that one for a while. And then I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, you're not so bad after all. What you need is meh, do it, you know?
Right.
But a lot of it is incubating. You know, the process of creativity is, you know, first of all, you saturate your mind with what you want to do, like the subject matter, the desire, the response that you're looking for. Saturation and incubation, you know, and then it just has to like mull around for a while. And then you get the aha moment where you know how to solve it or you know what to do with it. That's a scientific formula too for like, you know, solving problems. And
Yeah.
that's how it's just, for me, the challenge is being patient enough, you know, to wait between layers.
And the other thing I was going to say, which I loved about your work, is you have these areas where perspective just, as you say, you're drawn, the viewer is just drawn into your paintings. And then there's these beautiful abstract areas where you just sort of play with the surface of the picture, and then you're drawn into certain areas, and it's all kind of balanced so well. I just think it's really effective.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying
Hi.
to get it to affect the mind and the body, you know,
Peggy
so,
has a question. Peggy has her
Yeah.
hand up.
okay, go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
These are kind of technical questions, but one is, I'm interested that you said you're a better drawer than a painter. You looked pretty good painting to me. But do you sketch your entire composition before
No.
you start painting?
No, I do a series of drawings like that are separate, and it's, you know, like feeding
Yes.
the brain with ideas, and then it'll be like, you know, I would never recreate it because it would be boring to me. Like
Right.
what keeps me motivated is the discovery of something I haven't seen before too. So they're all like aspects of what's going to go into a painting, but it's not an actual
So
study.
you paint in sections? When you
Yeah, I would say that structures or certain sections are from the drawings for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
So
it is, you do
how
get a
long-
lot. Go ahead.
How long have you been painting in this way with oils? I can't believe you painted abstract in these huge things in oils.
I know, my arm's getting tired.
Come to acrylics. You'll never go back, I promise.
I just bought some acrylics. I have to get, you know, I have to get the canvases gessoed so that's fresh, ready
Once-
to go.
Once you do oil, it's really hard to go to acrylic. There's nothing like oil, even though I didn't find that, because when I went from painting representationally to abstractly, and the kind of color and the glow and all that I love and I got from oil, I didn't need for what I was doing.
There's something about density and weight and the way with oil paint, the pigments settle inside of the medium that is just so seductive that acrylic levels it, right? And it's a different thing. But my goal is to do both. It's like a lot of painters that I am looking at right now, contemporary painters do both. They work with acrylic for a sustained amount of time and then finish it on top of it.
There are now mediums for acrylic that you can get that same, you know, I love that the brush stroke that you lose when you're painting in acrylic, but you can get them with these mediums that are pretty great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring it. So
go to Nova Color. They have
I know, I
great,
just got my first shipment.
Yeah, and not that expensive.
Also, I applied to, I don't know if you guys know about this, but I hope I get this residency. I applied to is it Golden Foundation residents in upstate New York. And that you go for 4 weeks and they give you all the materials to explore and learn about it. And I was thinking, what is worse for the environment? Is it acrylic or oils? Because, all the plastic that goes down the drain and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I did some research on that, and actually the acrylic is better for the environment than oils. And so
Why
that kind of sold me on it. But you have to watch how you dispose of it,
Why would the acrylic would be better for the environment? Because we've been using oil paints for hundreds of years.
It's just the
Yeah.
volatile spirits, the
The solvents are very damaging, hard to get
Yeah.
rid of.
it's the evaporation of the spirits into, that's another thing, my poor lungs after their 40 years of doing this. But I also use the Gamsol. I use very little mineral spirits. I use very little mediums because I know how toxic they are. And when I wash my brushes, I use just oil. You guys know how, vegetable oil and soap. I don't use any of the paint thinner and none of that like I used to. But still, as you get older, it's like, okay, let's try to last a little bit longer. So I'm going to try to move to the acrylics, see what happens.
I'd just like to say that I paint oil paints with only medium. I use no Gamsol or turpenoid or anything of that kind. So it can be done with oil.
And the water-based oils, like
And I
the
don't-
cobras, are fabulous. They're
I
really
use-
good.
I use marble dust and linseed oil.
Oh, you do? Yeah, but see, I work so thin. I work really, really thin. So I think acrylics will have new possibilities and new challenges. So that's going to be one of the things I'm going to work on.
Well, I'm sure you can do it. You're amazingly talented. I tried it, but it's not my thing. I prefer oil, so I just eliminated all the toxins. I have none in my studio.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
That's inspiring.
It's possible.
Other questions?
I don't think there are any other questions. Nobody seems
Marie,
to
I
have their
just
hand
have
up.
I do have a really quick question. I didn't hear the answer. I think you already answered it in the beginning. I'm Miss Karen. In those early landscapes, which I found really lyrical and gorgeous, did you use photographs as references? And I'm talking about your early paintings.
Like early, like the skies and all that?
Yeah, it was right after the Humboldt, when you said you started making a transition to painting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
No, that was
curious-
all my imagination. Those river
It was.
ones. Yeah, that
Yes.
was no photo at all. That was like pure gestural, romantic painting, just pure
Okay.
paint. Like,
Thank you.
and
Wow.
like I was like drawing like sticks and and then I would just paint. But there was a big gap between my drawing and painting, So, but I was in a critical environment. I was in a university with a lot of people who were like, that's not what's happening in contemporary painting, and it's too romantic, and it's like this and it's that, and it's too mushy and blah, blah, blah. So I tried to get my brain on it more, and like put a more of a complex level of content in there. But that's interesting to hear because more and more these days, like my very last painting that I showed, it's pretty much all just straightforward painting. And it's not a lot of projection. It's just, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm going to paint, just straightforward. So, that's kind of encouraging me, Karen. So thank you.
Are you currently teaching this semester, or did you stop teaching?
No, I stopped teaching in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
After 5 semesters of teaching in my studio, on Zoom, in color theory and teaching advanced painting and all that stuff, it was really maxed me out like everybody else. And then when I went back, we went back for 1 semester because I missed the students so much, and they were not the same. They were just not the same students. They couldn't learn. They couldn't be together. It was just so psycho. I just like, okay, I guess it's time for me to retire. But they've come back now. The energy, the openness, and
Wow.
the ability to be with other people, you know, they're doing better now. The students have all bounced back. But that, as you know, was a weird time. Yeah.